Anybody who did not sign up on the list, if you could sign up in this round, write your name on it.
That's right.
Okay, I want to hear about it. We've been looking at it.
We've got it.
So I want to start with a little bit of background. For our subject was seed networks, community seed networks, and right now we have in existence Hawaii Public Seed Initiative, which is it grew out of in 2010 we sent out. Hector was involved with that, a survey monthly to all of the state of Hawaiians that asked people, we were looking for, were people growing anything to seed, how much experience did they have, how long have they been growing it, and did they want to learn more about growing, or people who did know it. And we got this huge response, and as a result, the Kohala Center, along with Organic Seed Alliance from the mainland, put together a big seed symposium where everybody got together. It was very educational, but it was a way to meet each other and realize that there were like 130 individuals that came from all the different islands who are interested in seed and in growing to seed and creating locally adapted seed. So out of that, the Hawaii Public Seed Initiative grew, and Hector's involved in that, Russell Nagata from this island, Glenn Tevis from Seedtar and Molokai. And so what we've done is seed education on all 5 islands for 2 years. This last year we identified some of what looked to be seed leaders, people who wanted to continue this work, were really serious. And so we did a next level training, and then what we asked those people to go to their islands and start to create this seed education. Because what we're really seeing is something that our grandparents just innately almost knew, how to grow things to seed. We have lost that information. And there are many, many people who don't know how to grow the seed and save seed properly. So we now have about 20 individuals throughout the different islands that are doing this work. This year we offered some mini grants for people to actually do projects. So on this island, Alana Stout is doing a variety mapping with it. So it's GPS. She's looking at, and all of you are going to get a questionnaire, whether you're seed savers or not. If you're not, just disregard it. But if you are, we're going to just ask what varieties do you grow, that do well in your area. We're going to be able to map them, have that map available. So if you look and you say, I live up in Kyrgyzstan, I want to grow tomatoes, what varieties do well up there? And tomatoes are a hard one for the island. So you can, hopefully we'll develop this for all the islands, but it's really going to take everybody's help in responding. Anybody who grows to seed to really respond to this questionnaire, because otherwise it's not, the mapping project isn't going to happen. So that's one of the things
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
It's going to include climate zones. So if you grow tomatoes in Kyrgyzstan, you don't just have to look for the people who grow the varieties in Kyrgyzstan. You can look across the state at climate zones that are similar to yours for varieties that might work in your area.
And what we're working towards is what that touched on this morning, and that is growing locally adapted, low input varieties. So that kind of goes towards organic, because organic people who grow organic seed do not add a lot of inputs. It's usually compost and just the regular organic inputs. So those seeds are really, it's tough love. They're not getting babied with all the great nutrients that you get from most of the seed that you get from Johnny's or different seed catalogs like that. And then you put them in your situation, and how are they going to do? So the ones who've grown with low inputs and locally adapted are going to be the ones that do best for you. University of Hawaii, where for many years, Dr. Gilbert, just take tomato, working on a tropical disease-resistant varieties. Dr. Brubaker, same with tropical corns. So there are already in Hawaii a number of varieties. Some of them have been lost, but that do well in the tropics. Because when you bring seed in from the mainland, I mean, I've seen corn that's just so pathetic, and And it's because it just can't do well in the tropics. So to really localize your seed, that's what's really going to be important in the seed network. So we identify that we need to start working with open pollinated, locally adapted seeds, and then identify where they're being grown well and what varieties, so you can hook into that. You may not want to save seed, but you want to have a greater chance of success of growing your vegetables or your other products. So you want to,
Okay, so this is kind of what came up for where we're going. We're kind of at ground zero right now, which is like education and gathering information and sharing information about what seeds work well, where, and yeah. But we're moving into, there's some seed share stations. There's one at the local board store in Pahoa, and there's one at Island Naturals. Those are areas, places where anybody can bring in seed. The seed is free, and then it's, you know, your responsibility to bring seed back. There's only 2 of those right now, and I know the one and Hubby has one also. So that's kind of the very most basic level of organized seed sharing. Moving into seed lending libraries, which they have on the mainland, a lot of places, which is where people will actually come and check out seed and make an agreement that they will grow that seed out and bring some seed back in a year or so. It's a lot of times it's actually located in a library. And then the 3rd stage of organized seed saving would be a formalized seed bank. So we're back here. We have 2 of these established. Our next steps.
Where are those? If someone wanted to find out one.
There's 3 seed share stations. One is in the Island Naturals at Hilo, and it needs people to bring seed to it.
Pahoa has one.
Pahoa has one.
They're both at our store, so bring your seed.
Yeah.
At Island Naturals.
Island Naturals in the local board store in Pahoa, and then it could be, I don't know.
It'll be in the library. It's at the
Pahoa Library.
And in the local board store. And the local board store one usually has a lot of seed because I supply it. And I grow the seed, but it really needs to go to the next step. And so we're doing CD Saturdays, CD Sundays, which are educational events people can come to for 2 hours and learn about growing just one vegetable. We just take one vegetable each time to seed, talk about how to maintain seed purity and varietal purity and how to store that seed properly. And so that's why Ilana said we're at baby steps. That seed share station, it's really like your best guess. Unless you get them out of the ones, and you know my handwriting, you may get good germination, you may not get good germination. You know, you may get this and you may get that. So that's why we need to, it's a way to feel out to the community, to let the community know there's something happening with seed, and try to find out who's interested and start to create this network.
So our next steps are going to be to identify what people are growing and what they're willing to share. We talked a little bit about that variety mapping project. My graduate research is actually specifically looking at finding old varieties that have come to Hawaii with different waves of immigration that have been maybe kept in family lines. If you know of anyone who keeps like some weird old green onion, please let me know. We're going to be working on, we had some discussion about looking at different types of varieties to save in the long run, as we're talking about seed banks. That's in the long run. And then we were talking about just general education and because the issue of invasive species has come up with sharing plants. I mean, the same thing comes up with seed exchanges and sharing seeds, making some kind of possibly digital media thing about what is Pono is sharing seeds. And so making sure that you're not, sharing brassicas that have black rot on them or low growth fire ants, and that you're actually sharing true seed and not just the, flower. Those are major next steps, I believe.
And then there was, Zach brought up the point of like, how do we prioritize? Do we want to save vegetable seeds, or do we want to save seed from perennial type plants or fruit trees. And so those are all very different little areas, and that's a good question. It really needs further discussion, whether it's like different groups, or the permaculture people might be more interested in the perennial type seeds versus vegetable varieties. And maybe, you know, in the long run for sustainability, that is the place to go. But maybe from starting to get everybody interested in growing seed and learning about that, you might, you know, the vegetable varieties might be better for people to start with because it's something they're more familiar with. And we talked about it almost like we need to, with the seed saving, like do cooking classes because a lot of these different varieties, especially Anna works with all these different heirloom varieties of squashes that she gets from around the world, and they all taste different, and you use them differently, right? And the perennial plants can be a total mystery to some people how to use them. So there needs to be education and not just growing the seed, but how do we use the vegetables and the produce from that so that, you know, it grows from that.
Anna, do you have anything from your experience on the island?
I can make it real brief. I've kind of been, I've grown in the last 2 years from a backyard gardener to a farmer, and I'm also now a seed grower, so I'm going into seed production with one crop, which is squash, and I chose it simply because we had lost that market years ago. And I thought, gosh, everyone told me you can't do it without heavily spraying and GMOs and all of these different things, and I thought, I just felt like I wanted to try it. So I did, and all of these wonderful things have come to pass because of that. And I trial lots and lots of seeds. I'm now growing seeds for Baker Creek Heirloom on the mainland. They just came out to visit the island. They're interested in more growers too. It's challenging, but wonderful. I mean, it's amazing to see some of the. I've got some squash growing that are from Uganda right now. They're fantastic. They're doing great against our pests here. Whenever it's beautiful, it's like the moon. So it's great because you, like I said, it's a passion. It's something that I never would have thought that I'd be doing this, but I just took it on and I'm really enjoying. And I work lots of different areas. I'm sort of a liaison, sometimes with the school, sometimes with the chefs, you know, with other farmers to try to work all of these areas and open up the communication between these areas so that we can all work together. And I'll be working with you all in the future as well. So that's
Any questions? Particular questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Is it possible to use the county teleconferencing system to have them do what they do where they are and we can listen in from Kohala? You know, for their classes, so we can have like a simultaneous island-wide class?
At this point, we haven't gotten to that, but
But you could ask your local occupied Wille person to come live stream it for you like they are right now.
There's a really good series on Seed Savers Exchange, has a series of webinars, I don't know how to say that word, about seed saving for all kinds of different crops, and it's usually crop specific. So that's a really good place to start. They're all Seed Savers Exchange.
Exchange.com or something?
Yeah, if you just type in Seed Savers Exchange to Google, it'll probably pop next or something pop up.
And the Hawaii Public Seed Initiative has a website and a lot of, there are free downloads to a lot of seed saving books and a lot of seed information, a lot of old historic information from CTAR on seeds and vegetable varieties grown. And then the website's being redone so that we can include the mapping project and then also have an online seed exchange. So check out the Hawaii Public Seed Initiative website too. Right now it's, like I said, in transition, but there's still all these good downloads on it.
Kat?
A couple comments. First of all, if we're looking at sustainability, although we would be a great exporter of seed, like some companies already do out of Hawaii, focusing on local seed and seed production for ourselves is really what I think we ought to be doing. And the other thing is, when we experience this new type of growing where we do till-free farming and we end up with a probiotic food that's nutrient rich and is probably the best food on the planet. Those seeds grown 3 times will then be accustomed to that farm and that land. They will give you something newer that you've never seen. So most of us that are commercial farmers, we're used to buying seed from the mainland, Johnny's, whoever can get it. I plant that basil, I plant that lettuce, I see regular production out of that. However, if I take that same seed and I grow it 3 times, in my situation, it will change. And I have recently seen this in our little place in Habi. I bought a little dumpling squash last year out of the health food store, a little tiny guy, little small guy. We have a dumpling squash this big. It's 10 times bigger than what I planted. And that's just the first round. The same thing happened when we were part of the Hawaiian gourd experiment, or traditional revitalizing of the seed for the Hawaiian gourd. Everybody grew with chemicals, nobody grew them organically, and everybody crossbred them. Well, that wouldn't work. Our farm, we grew them organically, we didn't crossbreed them, and naturally, they became bigger and bigger from the wild seed that had been harvested on the North Shore of Kauai. In the very first year, we got a nui gourd growing from 6 inches to 18 inches. In the second year, 28. In the third year, 36. So we see a progression as the seed changes if it's grown in a probiotic situation on the same land. So it's very important to share seed within our area. But once you've got your seed, if you keep propagating your own seed on your own land, you will see a completely new vegetable plant, whatever it is, after third generation.
Any last questions? We need to move on to the.
Get into a quick statement. I know that everyone here really cares for the seeds, but I have seen now some seeds from other islands come through our department that are infested with beetles. Neem seeds specifically, which should not be what they are pesticide kind of plants. Yeah, absolutely. So, everyone, I know that you are all the best people to know this stuff, but you know what your seeds look like. Look for small holes, all of that stuff, and look for pests. I've seen it come through, I was just like, I'm not a regulatory agency. You're not planting these things, freeze them. Just freeze them first. But keep an eye out. You are the front line.
And that was the other thing I'd like to offer was actually seed facilities. It's wonderful to have a transition place like a library or a health food store. But when I talk to Travis about a seed bank, we talk about 2 20-foot containers. One has refrigeration and the other one is for processing. So you always have real seed storage just like the university has. Only it's particularly for seeds and it's very controlled. Humidity, temperature, organized, so that we're not going to have seed-borne beetle pop up and wipe us out.
And I think that's why education is so important, especially as it becomes, seed saving and seed sharing becomes more and more popular with the general public. Like, we need to share this information about how to do it the right way so that we don't, have bigger problems.
One just quick last thing that we didn't touch on that's kind of fun is you can create seed clubs, like little clubs in your neighborhood, and you each say you're going to grow one vegetable, and then you say, and you do it really well, and you talk about it with each other, you meet, and you say, I got this problem, and you research it together, and you really learn about that one vegetable. And then you share that seed. So if you have 5 people in your club, at the end of that growing season, you have 5 different seeds. And if the next year you say, okay, we did that good, let's take 2 seeds. Next year you have 10 different seeds. They're all grown in your neighborhood, all locally adapted. You know how they were grown, you know who grew them, you know the problems they had, you talk about how you can solve them. So that's, starting at this level and then working out towards big temperature-controlled seed banks where first we have to get the community to really learn how to grow good seed, how to select and why you're selecting, how to keep varietal purity. There's a whole line of education that has to happen before we can really start putting the money and investing into storing seed in big facilities, because we want to know that we've got good seed, we're storing, and we have farmers who are going to grow that out so we can maintain that seed.
Okay, I think we need to move on. Jim and I want to. Jim. And if there's anyone else from that group who'd like to come up and be able to add into the conversation,
what's the old term? Come on down. Yeah, we had a diverse group, and the first thing we started talking about is, you can see here, we started talking kind of species specific, some brainstorming some of the ideas. So we at first talked about the pig feed and the garbage. Talked about the potential where there's actually systems out there. I believe one in Maui where you can actually graze hogs. So it's not necessarily a confinement system. And then other crops as a potential, like cassava. What would it take if cassava was raised and doing that? And then if we did raise cassava, what would be the processing requirements in order to prep it for consumption? We talked about the cost, the value of the feed to the animal, but then you've got to include the harvest and the mechanical processing cost in that, not only the source. The idea for goats came up with tea leaves. It was mentioned that other feeds are fed to goats, and one of my former graduate students, actually Mike's wife, did her master's thesis where she surveyed what the goats around the different islands consumed, went out and harvested them. We did a complete, in her thesis, is a complete description of the nutrient profile and the mineral profile. Oh, there must be 30, 35 different feedstuffs that had been fed to goats in Hawaii. And then she, in addition, selected those that were most prominently fed to goats and did digestibility trials with both goats and rabbits. And so in her thesis, she's got some actually digestibility data on some of these products for sheep and goats. And then we spent a little time talking about mobile chicken units, the potential there, and also talked about the use of soldier flies. Help me, somebody. I wrote down Robert O. I don't know what his last name. Olivier. Evidently had raised the soldier flies as a potential. So you can see much of our conversation at the very beginning was kind of brainstorming what is currently being used, because when you go to page 2, the idea came up a lot of the albizia, Malochia, the gum tree, gunpowder tree, other trees, what would be the potential of those? And the comment was that the trees have been knocked over and the animals actually selectively graze the leaves and liked the leaves. So, and none of us knew of any work really that had been done in actually nutrient profiling or the use of these rapidly growing trees. We spent a little time talking about, people asked what is, I had used the term making silage. Some people didn't understand the silage making process, so we went through the silage making process, the sequence of silage making. And then these here are other feedstuffs or other commodities that could potentially be used. We talked about the banana plants, which include both fruits and stumps, and there's actually people currently using banana stumps that's actually being chopped and made into silage. The mac nuts, specifically the mac nut, the example of people that have raised mac nuts where the pigs come in and harvest a lot of the mac nuts, but also on Oahu, where they take the mac nuts and they extract the oil for the use of various cosmetic reasons. We've had the mac nut cake, which is a good feed for fish. Potential of sunflowers. The problem we have with sunflower or sorghum, we've tried raising some of those plants here in Hawaii, and the problem is the birds harvest most of it before it gets up to where you can harvest it. And so that we've never been successful. Azola, we talked about fish byproducts. I was unaware that if a producer took a tub down to Suisan, they'd fill it up for you. So you could get fish byproduct waste, but certainly fish waste is. And if you look worldwide, that's probably in the aquaculture industry the most the most effort is being spent right now in aquaculture industry is a replacement of fish meal and aquaculture diets, because fish meal is becoming so expensive because of the limitations on availability of fish meal. And so in the aquaculture industry, so that's something that you may find competition with as far as the price, because aquaculture people spend a lot more for their feeds than terrestrial animals. But blood meal, garbage, and also the bakery waste. That potentially, and you can see in all of these cases, we mentioned the fact that the real issue is how much of this is available, when is it available, and is it in any synchrony that could be used for large-scale feeding? And I'll come back to that thought a little later. Then we talked about the role of some of these foodstuffs, the household goods and things that could be used for soldier fly or larva production. And the example, one of the people that was there says it's about 30% protein, and they're using it for feeding ducks and tilapia currently. So it is potential. But then we started talking about some of the issues that maybe as a group that we should be considering. So number one is the need for rendering, should be a T on that, rendering plant. Aware that the byproducts from the animal slaughter industry can be more efficiently used. It's our understanding that most of that right now is being buried because it isn't being processed and it isn't being used, and that's a significant amount of material coming from them. We spent time talking about sanitation issues and processing of all of these wet byproducts, foodstuffs. As we mentioned this morning, comment came up as, let's look to Asia. What are some of the other feedstuffs that potentially are being used? So maybe it would be valuable to seek and look. This food waste, whether it comes from homes or schools, where the containers are made available to collect the food waste. I actually know that my father-in-law and mother-in-law for years had 5-gallon buckets outside the kitchen, and all of their waste went in the 5-gallon buckets, and the pig farmer came along and picked it up once a week and took it to feed. But there is a significant amount. And then how do we process that food waste most effectively? Education, raising awareness and then we spent quite a bit of time talking about federal, state, and county regulations and renewable energy and some of these extraneous issues that are related to transport of feeds, the processing of feeds, the cost of processing those feeds. And then they asked the question, is there a local source of salt for animal feeds being produced here in Hawaii? Most of it probably comes from the mainland in salt blocks or loose salt, or maybe even mixed in some of the complete feeds that are brought in the state. But I forgot, whoever mentioned that said it's being produced a little bit in Kona. Not significant amount. Probably the key is being united as an organization. We talked about, whether it's the beef industry or whatever industry that we're talking about, is that they have an organization within the state to where then you have a body of people that can get the ear of the politicians, and then that yields to more efficient use of resources and getting funding to address issues of that particular group. So it's really developing community organizations in these areas. And then the real goal, the question came up is, what is the real goal? Are we really looking for profitability? Are we looking at the sale as an occupation or a main source of income? Or do we swim over here and swing over there on the other side and say, is the real goal to help our people understand that how can they, at home or on a small area of land, take care of food production for them and their families. So kind of two thoughts there as far as scale, larger scale to small scale. So group, did I miss anything?
You do an excellent job.
Excellent job.
Excellent. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
What about some of the farmers, like the big farmers growing their own feedstock and using their waste in their barns to feed their feedstock?
Well, with the new processing that Mike is using for some of these pig units, there is no feed weight or manure.
Because he wasn't gathering his litter, he said he leaves his litter in.
Yeah, what I'm saying is there isn't, so there would be no waste coming from the piggery. You would,
But our current big,
There is a sustainability farm that we're trying to build one. David Furtis was here this morning,
yeah,
and David has started the first one in the state. And basically, it's integration of plants and animals together, and showing that using the show methodology, by having the animals and the plants together, you can feed the animals and you can make all your inputs on 5 acres of land. So basically it's 3 cows, 10 female pigs, and 500 chickens on 5 acres where you grow all your crops using the compost from the facility and the sprays you make from the bones of your cattle and your pig, the eggshells, you make your sprays. And you know, even if we use EM or some kind of composting method, that's the method that you fertilize the plants, that you utilize to grow your animal feed.
I appreciate that method. I guess what I'm trying to adjust to is the piggeries that I see today. And that they're all on slabs of concrete. And then they have this wastewater that they run over to the gulch. Instead of doing that, you know, for example, Bernard at the Wainea years ago, he would raise corn to feed his pigs. So the same way in the EM technology, we can have a very clean barn, even if it has concrete floors, if we wash our piggery down with EM solution. That EM solution mixed with the manure and the urine can be directly fed into field crops in a rice, logie type of situation. Doesn't hold in a pen, doesn't stay in a pond, goes immediately into the field, and the corn, whatever he's growing, can use that as a fertilizer resource. So this is to implement with current piggeries, not rebuilding the new piggery, because obviously we need to have motion that way to build better piggery, but to try to use the current piggery and encourage it to produce fodder on site from their waste.
I think we need to test that first, that really works your way.
Oh, it does. It does. There's piggeries in the middle of towns in Japan that have no odor, and they grow their own crop, right?
And then there's a
4 feet
no
away is a-
lagoon, there's a no lagoons for the.
There's no lagoons. No lagoons. And 4 feet away is public thoroughfare, people walking by, and there's no odor. So it's possible.
This works, so I should use it.
Absolutely works. And it works in the current pig situation we have, not the ones that we need to do.
Okay, so let's shift to the third vector. And who else is?
I'll go with Hector.
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And anyone else from this group that would like to come up to the group?
Okay, so Hector facilitated the integrated agroecological models and soil health group, and the first thing that came up was land policy. The access for self-reliance was really a critical component. A lot of people feel that they're lacking access, and then also with the land policy, there was a lot of discussion about going back to an ahupua'a type model, as was sort of mentioned this morning, and a lady mentioned about the DASHA program in Russia. I don't know if you knew that one.
Like a collective, almost like the kibbutz, I guess.
So at least that the city people could get access to land to farm on, and then bring that food back to their local neighborhoods. And then the other thing was people brought up about more need for conservation practice assistance, that a lot of farmers are not using good conservation models, and also water storage on site, controlling soil erosion effectively. They also felt that there should be some policies to help curtail import and export to have a more self-contained economy, that there should be maybe tariffs or subsidies or something to help promote more of a local economy. Facilitate working with nature was a prime importance, and then a lot of questions came about what were we providing for? Are we providing for tourism in the state? Or are we providing for development? And we just keep on this development model of subdividing land into small properties and selling for a fortune, and for people who don't live here? And or should we have a policy of promoting self-reliance? Facilitating minimum waste was another big component. I think that dovetails on a lot of the other discussions we've already had today. And with that, education, they said the education system needs to be revamped for more hands-on training and enjoyable learning, that people don't like sitting in the classrooms to learn agriculture. They want to be out in the field learning hands-on. And certainly I think the classroom discussion would be facilitated if you actually done it in the field first, so you'd have a better understanding of what you're talking about. And also in terms of education, we're not preparing the youth for a real transition to a more sustainable economy, and that should be emphasized basically K through 20 more, better preparation for a transition to a more sustainable economy and local communities, and empowering the next generation. The next generation is kind of going through the K through 12, K through 16, and not really feeling that they can have an opportunity to make a difference. Not that they don't want to make a difference, they just think there's just so many barriers to making a difference. Dave Sansone brought up a bit about nitrogen-fixing tree-based cropping systems to deal with the nitrogen shortfalls and mulching on site. They talked about nurse trees, to have a nitrogen-fixing tree to nurse other non-nitrogen fixers, that may be fruit trees or whatever, but planting nitrogen-fixing trees in association with other crop trees. Then there was a whole discussion about local biofertilizers, to make our own fertilizers, the biochars, the rock dust, the EMs, the green manures, with minimal hauling. So in other words, there wouldn't be just like all this is done in Hilo, to be done in the local communities, and facilitate local community biofertilizer development. Changing mindsets, more local communities, ag service type businesses, like the local community fertilizer, biofertilizer business. Would it be, each community would have these ag service businesses to facilitate greater local community self-reliance. Recycle centers that serve local farmers, that the farmers could go and pick up cardboard mulch, newspaper mulch, etc. from their local centers.
That's a real good one.
Yeah, should put a big star by it.
Yeah, real basic.
Yeah. Satellite classes, they said like all these things would go to like at NHERC or whatever, that they should be broadcast through local community centers. I know Senator Ruderman had proposed those type of ideas, at least initially in his ag bill that was supposed to go for Puna through the legislature, but he apologized and said it kind of got hijacked when you take it to the ledge. Then every island gets involved, and then it morphs into this thing, whereas like positions for outreach from CTAR or something, I don't know exactly what it was, and 50% was for this and 25% for that, and King all completely changed rather than having a thing where we'd all link together. Capitalization gaps was a huge one, that it's so challenging in terms of having the fiscal resources to get started in agriculture, even for small farmers. You want to just lease a couple of acres of land, and then for a young person who doesn't have much, it's really hard compared to the person who comes in there with this fancy business plan and says, I have all this money to get something started. It suggested that we develop a policy plan and that for agriculture as a whole, develop a policy plan that would facilitate a more sustainable agriculture. Another thing that came up kind of related back to education is that we really need to document what works so we can learn with minimal, as one person said, minimal BS, that we need to document, because there's so much confusion out there about some people find something works and other people don't, and it just slows the whole process of moving to a more sustainable agriculture down. So if we can document, okay, if you're going to use rock dust, it needs to be ground to this size or finer, or it's not going to give you any effect in the next 3 years. Biochar, what wood products are used that work, what temperatures did the pyrolysis occur at, etc. That there's very poor documentation about all these alternative practices, and even quantifying what microbes are present and things, because maybe the person says the INO didn't work is because they got it from the wrong kind of place and didn't have the right microorganisms, etc. So those were the kind of main things. And the group, does it have anything else that they wanted to share? Yeah, go ahead.
One idea that I have had, I've been incubating it for a few years. I met with the CoOp Center about 3 years ago, is to create a machinery co-op for farmers. And I don't want to say young farmers, and I don't want to say beginning farmers, just for people that are trying to do the do. And I have a permaculture farm still. I have my old farm still in Michigan that is the Michigan Folk School that's being run by an awesome couple. And I used to be very involved in what they call steel in the field trainings, where you get all the kind of latest farm machinery and see what works with the spaders, and at the Acres conferences they'd have trainings that called steel in the field to see what kind of technology is out there. Most of the tractors that people are using today, where were they designed for? Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. Big tractors pulling huge flat land. And we've got, especially where I'm at, it's tippy. We have land that's all going left and right, it's going straight downhill and things like that. And our neighbor rolled his tractor about 2 years ago, and he died. And I've seen that happen, here, even with myself. So I'm very interested in is creating safe, super efficient tractors that are very environmentally friendly with appropriate technology. So that's just something I want to throw out there, that it wasn't right at the time. They didn't have the right funding to do it. But I'm looking toward the Italian machineries, Italy has a similar terrain, if you will, as we do. And all 4 tires are the same size. They're much lower. You can take it at an angle like this, and it's not going to tip over. And things that conserve soil, spaders, things like that. So it's just something that I want to throw out there. If it's in someone else's head, no one can afford, very few people I should say, can afford to go out and implement out their farm. But if we had 20 farmers, and we put the training together for safety, and it would go, there'd be a schedule, and that kind of thing. All those details we kind of played with a lot of how that would work. We could go out and spray 5 farms in the co-op, with whatever. We could go till, we could do bed shaping. They bury the rocks, rocks go down lower, softer stuff on the top. You could plant right in it. You could be spraying from the front. You could, there's just ways to increase the efficiency that are we just don't know about.
Is there things like this coming out of India and Thailand and China? I mean, as far as implements for small farms?
They're really coarse. The stuff coming out of China and India right now would never get in the United States just due to safety stuff. But the Italian stuff is winning. There's no emissions. They're very quiet. They're super safe. They're really leading the way. These are made by companies, Antonio Carraro and Ferrari. Well, there's all these Italian guys. They've been making these things. They invented the spader, right? The Italians. So just to throw that out there, that I really think that that's also a limiting thing. The kids are like, I got a weed whacker. Because I see what's going on there.
I think Japan also has small machinery, and also from someplace in California as well.
Yeah, Eugene Canales at Ferrari Incorporated, yeah.
I could see this very beneficial, especially for some of the young farmers who see in Kohala that are into permaculture. If they could come in and see their acre tilled lightly one time, shaped into beds, then they bring their group in to plant it. It doesn't have to be worked ever again by that machine. But that machine took days and days off of hand working that, or a hand tiller doing that. So I see that as a very good move towards all the farmers to move ahead. Again, that equipment sharing, it will be interesting to see how that goes, because everybody's going to want to plant in a similar time on the same property type of system.
What about going back to the cows and the horses? What's wrong with that, you guys?
Yeah, you're proud of the horse?
Yeah.
I want to go watch you do it.
Yeah. Bring back the water buffalo.
To be stable on hills.
I think Glenn Tevis on Molokai is with the young farmers he did there on the Hawaiian homelands. They do a equipment share. So if you wanted to tap into his, and they also go out and help each other when they're doing it too. So you might tap into his information.
The other thing that we talked about was brought up was having some kind of voice to say, okay, the Big Island is ready for its 10-year plan to sustainability. And we need a group that says, this is how it goes. It's proposed that we go into like the Mathews group and start speaking with them, since their current board is dominated by large business aggregate as opposed to the small farmer feeding local people. I think that would be very powerful for us if we could get the direction going that we need to be self-sufficient in a small way, and if they want to still have big ag and export and stuff like that, we'll find a place for it. But it's really about us having a voice to say, this is how we're going to transition. We know that we need to get back to a local way of farming that was done for thousands of years because it worked. More people were, 10 times as many people were fed in that system than we feed now. So it's important that we look at how to get back to that system, and with our current system in place, how do we transition to that? That information from us, as a voice, whatever that is, could be very helpful for the Big Island, maybe the state will follow. We could be the first ones to be all organic, to be all sustainable, to be the probiotic farmers. We could be the ones to be the most productive and highest quality food. We can lead that. But if we have a group voice, instead of just WholeFarm or Farmers Co-op, whoever it is, if we have some kind of group voice, then we have a better chance of being heard and possibly.
During that group discussion, there were terms like capitalism and communal thrown out, and depending on how you look at it, you might have different opinions on it. I think one term that could be looked into more is social enterprise, which looks into the triple bottom line. Basically, you're not only looking at the economical benefits, you're looking at the ecological and the community benefits that sort of idea provides. And that could be a platform for agriculture here to move forward.
There were also several people who commented when I remember asking a question about land access models, and I don't think we have that on the chart.
Early on.
Yeah.
How are we going to educate our politicians?
They don't need to get
voting booth.
Elect the right ones.
Throw them out of their jobs.
We need to have form a group to educate the politicians.
Go to the voting booth.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple things. One is, right now, we're coming up on doing a review of the general plan, the county general plan. In our county, the charter is our constitution. Under that is the general plan, and the community development plans under that. In theory, zoning, everything else, subdivision is all below that. And recently, the planning department came in and said the general plan review and revisions is due in 2015, but we'd like to change it that we start reviewing in 2015 with no end date. So then I fought for an amendment, like we gotta have an amendment, an end date, and, or else it'll never get done. And we sort of fought about that, and I wanted to give them an extra year, and Gregor wanted to give them 4 years, and anyway, so we sort of compromised, but it's the overarching plan for the island, and you all, you know, we could form a task group. I encourage the planning department, we don't have to wait and have you all put together some big thing and then go out and have hearings. We could have the cultural commission start working on one area. We could have, you know, different, you know, start, you know, delegate and get the groups, the CDP groups doing it. And that would be a way that actually on a very high level, conceptually, you would have input. And it could be, if you look at the, you know, go in and look at our county general plan, you see there are different sections from, you know, beauty and transportation and all different things. And just sort of, you know, take one, and we're going to do this task force, and we're going to make a vision, and here's how we go about getting it. I think if you sort of piggyback on the mayor's group, you know, then it's, you know, who's, they're the mouthpiece for who, and it's all depend. They're not, you know, that's the mayor appointed them without even any council review, which
Yeah,
usually
we're
they don't
gonna
get it
sell
first.
farm lots for $1 million this year.
Anyway, so I think that would be good, and I'm not sure what the person's name back there, we talked about that, you know, enterprise and triple bottom line, that's Kenta, but that's sort of the direction that I've been trying to go in, that triple bottom line. You know, if it's just economically feasible, that's not good enough anymore, environmentally, and the socio-cultural element, you know, being where the community is part of it. And that even gets into, do we want multinationals dominating this island in ag domination, or us is more on the other island. But also on the real property tax, I'm on the county's, the real property tax task force, along with Fresh Onishi, we're the 2 council people, and there's 3 general. And one of the ideas we're talking about is sort of an enterprise project where you wouldn't have to, for your first couple of years in business, not pay property tax, and how to, this isn't just ag, but sort of ideas, you know, how can we promote and make it more feasible, or even if you're a lessee. So it is good to pursue these things, and some of them are going on, and there are methods, and I think, you know, we're, like I said, you better opt out if you don't want to be on our network and let everyone know who you are, and sort of form some kind of group. I mean, every time there's been something that's come before the council that I knew I had 6 or 7 votes against me to start with, and I brought in, you know, community members and this, and we squeak out 6 votes. But it's only where I had a large group come in and say, you know, and make their, you know, we've got 9 people there. I'm one of 9 slices of the pizza. So I just encourage that. But there are things going on where you could really play a big role in doing that. So I'll let you sort of work on that and pull everybody in at the Koala Center.
So community development business plans are very important. Participated on the community council, community council act, the agriculture community council, and participate on the hearings, the scheduled hearings. So it's something that we should implement along with knowing how we're going to go about these things.
And one last thing, when the mayor comes in and says he's chosen one of 5 of the mass burn, or that we're going to do incineration, and it's going to cost $200,000. $200 million every year, or whatever, 200 million. You know, what are you all going to do? Are you going to speak up and let's just roll over and fine and dandy, or do we really want a serious compost? that where he says it's not gonna take green waste, and he says it's not gonna create green waste, but somehow green waste is somehow defined as narrowly as what green waste is now being diverted rather than that potential of how much. And I think working with like Linda Peterson, how do we make that happen? But
It's even another debate, state versus county. You know, the state's trying to preempt the county, like the county's not gonna have any say. The community don't have any say. And it's about to happen, you know? It's already happened in 27 different states. The state overrules the biotech corporations. They can come and purchase land, lease land, rip off landowners. And it's all
I think what he's talking about is there were bills that said that the counties will no longer have any jurisdiction as to any matter having to do with agriculture. Okay. Completely, and so no jurisdiction. Right now, we both have, you know, the county and the state and the feds all deal with welfare at a different level. But, so there was including the major players proposing that are all state legislators from this island. This island are leading the way, except Clarence Commissioner. But anyway, just so you're aware, it's moving the government away from the people, putting an ocean between the people and the first layer of government. Yeah.
One thing that I just wanted to throw out there, that everyone knows what this H-Power that's coming down, the incinerator's coming down. The incinerator needs more waste than we produce on this island right now, just a little bit more. It needs 50,000 tons more a year or something to keep it at max operation. There will be no recycling going forward because they need it to feed it. And I've been playing in the waste game and looking at the numbers for 3 years. And when we went and looked at that over in Oahu and talked to the guys, the players that are recycling big time over there, if they get that here, if we let that happen, they have no incentive at all to recycle or redirect anything. They will want it all.
They have a disincentive to recycle.
They have, totally, exactly. Thanks, James. It will be all the green waste, they will divert it. Everything will go in that thing.
Paper, food, all
And
that.
that's Billy, that's Uncle Billy. And
Who's
it-
gonna take the 2 garbage cans full of paper mostly? There's mostly paper. There are 2 garbage cans out there. Our lunch, it's almost all paper. Anybody?
They're all going to landfill right
They're
now.
all, thank
I'll take
you.
one.
Thank you. Awesome.
It's not weeds, it's
Thank you. We've got to deprive them of, we have got to deprive,
Stop feeding the beast,
we
yeah?
have to stop feeding the beast. We have got to reduce our trash, and I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir here. But we've got to get our neighbors, everybody, get off the plastic is one thing, and everything that's compostable, we gotta compost it.
Right, and even plastics are moving towards, quote-unquote, plastics becoming compostable. So the science is moving towards moving compostables to be a bigger and bigger of what is going to be, yeah. Anyway, I
Margaret,
think,
there's a couple questions.
okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump on that a little bit. We're all talking about looking for the big solution, and I guess the way that I've structured my small farm is just start and then grow it. And one thing that I started is, it's like I didn't have a compost initiative here. There was one called the Western Queens Compost Initiative, and that was gobbled up by the city of New York, and now it's thriving. It's huge. The city of New York adopted all of these. You can look up on New York City Recycles if you're interested. But I decided, since I had volunteered with them, to kind of copy what they did on a small scale, and I just got some buckets, some gamma lids. Those are the ones that are leak-proof. And any of the chefs that I was dealing with, I had a talk with them saying, can you give me some of your kitchen scrap? The pig farmers are on it already. They get what's scraped from the plates. I asked if I could get the vegetable peelings, which also meant getting some of my squash seeds back, and I could do kind of quality control on my own product, which was nice. And then also fish. I started doing fish composting, and that's something that's done in a lot of areas. It's done in Australia. LSU Egg Center has a nice book available on it. Pacific Northwest does it, of course, up in the Northeast as well. So I started making my own fish fertilizer, and also composting the fish. In like 6 months from one restaurant was over 2 tons that were taken from, and that's, I think the pig farmers probably got at least twice that again. So I just created my own little system. I get cardboard from one of my chefs. I get coffee grounds and vegetables from another. And just as a perk for them, we were talking about earlier, what I did is I said pick a school. And each chef picked a school. And then I went and I either taught a cooking class or a gardening, farming, pumpkin class at that school. And that gave them like an immediate, oh, okay, because it is something they have to think about. I do sanitize buckets, but it is one more thing in their kitchen. And those kitchens are tight and crowded, and it's one more thing for them to have to separate out. But you give them that perk and you bring back the pictures from the class and you show, So sometimes that can be a road to a much bigger picture. Lots of us doing that. But sometimes we just got to start. And starting small, I mean, it's great. I mean, 2 tons from one restaurant. We had a little party when that happened. So, I just encourage you all to think in terms of that in your neighborhoods, because there's a lot of things that are possible.
I have something to add that wasn't mentioned. I read about hedgerows in England, and they're like a buffer zone between farms and a sanctuary for wildlife. So I'd like to see a lot of the farms grow native Hawaiian species, like Okoleko, and a lot of the native species are resistant to drought and some diseases, and they would hold the soil in between the farms to prevent soil erosion and catch water. And, and it would make the farms more attractive so that you could possibly do ecotourism, even fish ponds in some areas that are more wet and have traditionally had fish ponds. And you can use fish waste, to feed the plants and stuff like that. But to make it more Hawaiian the way it was, and possibly to find traditional crops that were raised there, that would make it better.
If any of you guys need information on tree crops, let me know. I have tons of material printed out. You can sit there for hours.
Okay, so when I get some presentation before the council, I want all these voices to come in there
We meet at your
and say,
Send it to the email list.
We'll be there.
Send it to the email list.
yes, everyone here will get the email list.
Margaret, when you commented at CBP, there was consultants that came in as facilitators. Has the county fund an ag facilitator to get the conversation focused in each district?
Well, it's hard. I mean, I think we have to look for money. I tried to get a little bit of money added from the budget. Everything is flawed, so we have to
I
work.
think it would help us go to the next stage if we had people that help.
Well, we have Glenn here. He can help us. He's the ag specialist.
Thank you, Margaret.